Hey everybody, it's Simon Williams coming at you with another video for Northeast Christian Apologetics. Once again, I have you out here on the trails of Connecticut with me, and we're just going to do some walking around and some talking and discussing things related to Christianity. Another aspect of why I believe that Christianity is true is getting away from comparative religions. Right now we're talking about how about arguments against the existence of God. Personally, I find the arguments against the existence of God to be not compelling, and they would, and I have to reemphasize this, and these arguments would have to be compelling in order to justify them as reasons for not believing in the truth of Christianity. They would have to be compellingly strong, like showing a undeniable or a contradiction that can't be circumvented by other reasoning, things like that. And once you understand the nature of the Christian God, a lot of these arguments against his existence kind of fall away. The argument against omnipotence, I've discussed in other videos. I explained why that's not strong. And also omniscience, I went into a lot of detail about that in in a few videos. But another argument against the existence of God is the Hiddenness Argument. And basically this is an argument that's championed by Dr. Schellenberg, and it kind of goes like this. If a perfectly loving God exists, then there would be a strong epistemic situation in relation to theism. There isn't a strong epistemic situation in relation to theism, therefore theism doesn't exist. So it basically hinges on the idea of there being inculpable unbelief. That since there isn't a strong epistemic situation in relationship to theism, that means that inculpable unbelief can occur, and that a loving God, a truly loving God, would never allow one of his children to remain in inculpable unbelief. And by inculpable, he means that person is not at fault. Even though, and he's talking about a person who sought after God too and remained in unbelief, a person who is seeking God and still can't believe, that person disproves the existence of a truly loving God. And personally, I think that argument fails for two reasons. One of the reasons is that I believe that a strong epistemic situation in relationship to theism is true. It does obtain in the actual world, and the way that we can know that is by assuming that it's true, and in order to falsify it. You assume that's true in order to falsify it. So if a strong epistemic situation in relation to theism actually obtained, then what would we expect to see as a side effects? Well, personally, I think that you would expect to see that atheism is, globally speaking, uncommon. And when I say uncommon, I mean 20% of the global population or less. That's uncommon to me. And I think that atheism is a lot less common than 20%. But there's a Pew Research study that shows that, there's research studies that show that atheism in general is just is definitely lower than 20%. You can say as high as 20%, and as far as I'm concerned, you could say as high as 25%, and that's still uncommon. Generally speaking, when you come across somebody in the globe, in the world, if they're a human being, they're probably going to believe in God. It's common and natural. As we discussed earlier, it's both natural and common for humans to believe in God. I think it's time to head back. I'm pretty sure this is the path. If it's not, I'm next to the river, so I can always look for the bridge. So that's one thing. So I would, if a loving God existed, he would want to have a relationship with humanity. And if he did want to have a relationship with humanity, you would still expect to see, you would expect that atheism was, generally speaking, uncommon, and it is. And Schellenberg obviously agrees with this. He thinks that the point is that you need to have inculpable unbelief. There will always be, at least Schellenberg believes this, and I believe it too, that there will be people that remain, even if a strong epistemic situation in relationship to theism were to obtain, you'd still have people that to remain in unbelief. They would be in culpable unbelief. They would be at fault for their unbelief. Another reason number two, why I think what I would expect to see if a strong epistemic situation were to obtain, number two, that if this is a loving God that wants a relationship with humanity, then as you find the religion with more correct views related to this God, you would find more adherents. Like, you would find more people in that particular religion. And we do see a distribution. It is not the population of adherents is not equal across the board. There are definitely religions with more adherents than others. And what are the religions with the most adherents? Unsurprisingly, it is Christianity and Islam. Those are the top two, and by a long shot. So, if that were to be the case, then it would seem that the Abrahamic religions would contain a God of love, and they do. Even though people would disagree with that, those religions, even Islam, purport to have described some kind of God of love. All right. And what does so far a strong epistemic situation in relationship to theism is seemingly to be true. Now, another thing, if this God of love were to be a God of love, then the religions, or at least one of the religions with that, I think I might be going in the wrong direction. Okay, so one of the religions is, if this loving God wants a relationship with humanity, then I would expect him to not be a racist. So I would expect that a religion, at least one of them, that that it either has the most or part of the most accurate or true beliefs regarding this God of love, would be globally diverse. And one of the religions is like that. It's Christianity. Christianity is far and away the most globally diverse religion on the planet. It's way more diverse than Islam, way more diverse than Buddhism and Hinduism, and it's even more diverse than atheism. Yep. It is the most diverse belief system on the planet. And obviously I'm going to throw up stuff on the screen to prove my point, but if the God of love exists, then it seems to be the case that the God of love, that a strong epistemic situation in relation to theism is true, and it exists, and it seems to be that it's in relation to the theistic variety of Christianity. Is this like a different river? Uh-oh. All right, we're gonna go that way, and now it's time to start praying because I might be completely lost. All right, so what I said was, so I gave you 4 things there that say that I would expect if a strong epistemic situation in relation to theism were to obtain, and they don't falsify it. They are in accordance with what I would expect, you know? So I do think that a strong epistemic situation does obtain. So I think that Schellenberg is just wrong on that. I don't know what he was thinking, to be honest. Like, he, in his book, he just seems to assume that there isn't a strong epistemic situation in relation to theism. Like, in his book, he describes something like what I would describe as an overcoming grace model for belief in God's existence, where while you're going through, it's basically what I said for, it's just intuitively plausible, you know, and that it's both common and natural for humanity to believe that God exists. That's exactly what he describes in his book, and it's what Ken Keathley, I think it's Ken Keathley, he describes this overcoming grace model where you just get a sense of God's presence in your life, and then you come to believe in him and his salvific work and things like that. And so it's like, in what way isn't it, and I'm not saying that is the strong epistemic situation in relation to theism. I think that phrase, that title, that thing that Dr. Schellenberg describes in his book, what I literally just said, is so broad that it can encompass several things. Like, it could be the case that somebody is persuaded that God exists just because it's natural for him to believe. Or it could be the case that somebody comes to believe because that was his culture growing up. Or it could be the case that they've discovered arguments for the existence of God and they were persuaded that way. Or it could be the case that they have come to see God's handiwork in the sciences, and so have come to believe that atheism is false and that God is true, and things like that. It could be a ton of different stuff, all meshed together as a mosaic of Christian belief, you know, of belief in God, of theistic belief. Not necessarily Christian, but theistic belief. So I don't know what Schellenberg was thinking. I think that a cessert or a strong epistemic situation in relation to theism does obtain. So what's the other thing? I think the Hiddenness argument fails. The second reason why I think the Hiddenness argument fails is because I think that if there is a God of love who is also omniscient, and then he could have overriding justification and knowledge, or he could have knowledge that provides overriding justification for why he allows somebody to remain in inculpable unbelief. I don't know what that justification is. I'm not omniscient myself. I'm not a divine being or anything, but this needs to be compelling. And since this argument needs to be compelling, and since it's not compelling, and that it could easily be the case that God has some justification for leaving someone in inculpable unbelief, even though I kind of suspect that that's not the case. But be that as it may, if it were the case, I think that God would have justification for leaving that person in inculpable unbelief. You know, like, so I don't know what it is. As I said, this is kind of where this tactic that I'm using right now is kind of called divine or theistic skepticism, where, like, since we're of the attitude that we have to prove that God doesn't exist, then I'm skeptical of anything that does purport to disprove the existence of God, especially if it's something weak like the hiddenness argument. I would love to hear stronger versions of it. Like I said, like I am of the mind that we ought to be trying to disprove Christianity. So I like to hear about arguments or arguments against the existence of God, as well as arguments for the existence of God, and people trying to knock them down and stuff like that. For the record, I don't think that all the arguments for the existence of God work, but there are some that are very good and do work. And from my perspective, a person doesn't need any arguments at all for the existence of God in order to be perfectly justified in their belief. But this is reasons for why I'm a Christian, and there's more to be said. I think that church history provides evidence. I think that the massive success of Christianity provides evidence for the existence of, or the truth of Christianity. I think that the development of the sciences is a Christian endeavor, and that if you like science, then you should be a Christian. And as a Christian who loves science, I say, you're welcome. You know, if you like science, you're welcome, you know. And I'm talking about modern science here, because the modern scientific endeavor was brought about by just Christians. Not Hindus, not Buddhists, not Muslims, although a lot of philosophy was definitely engaged and expanded on by Muslims and stuff, but the modern scientific endeavor was brought about, the fathers of science. If you look up the fathers of science, they're Christian. So that's also another reason. The betterment of humanity that's been brought about by Christian missionaries and stuff, generally speaking. Obviously there's bad eggs in every bunch, but when we talk about the increase in human morality, it's a Christian endeavor, you know. Like Charles Darwin, you know, witnessed it firsthand when he was, you know, going on his voyages and stuff. He straight up said that if it is like patent ingratitude of the voyager to forget the work of Christian missionaries in changing the tribes from cannibalistic war nations to Christianized tribes and individuals. You know, so even though there was a lot of problems and evil that got brought about by that, the state in which they were left is better than the state that they were in before. But yeah, other reasons, like I do think that some of the arguments for the existence of God are strong and persuasive. I wouldn't say that most arguments are compelling, but like I said, you do not need compelling arguments to have justified belief in Christianity. I think that you're perfectly fine with just being intuitively true about it. Just consider it to be intuitively true, like your own personal experience. That's all you need. All right, I think that's enough of me rambling though.